Tonight, educational responsibility.
Do you think parents should be in charge of their child's education as the primary stakeholder?
The question over parents' role in the nation's school system.
It puts school districts often in an impossible situation.
As the debate over curriculum, mask mandates, and vaccine requirements rages across the country. Plus, persecution in Afghanistan. The extreme risk to religious communities in the wake of the U.S. withdrawal. And lifting the limit. The president now mulling over a nuclear option to raise the debt ceiling. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Policing parents in public schools, backlash over a new DOJ directive. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Bratter. We will get to that, but we want to begin with another school shooting tonight. At least 4 victims were injured after a gunman opened fire at Timberview High School in Arlington, Texas today.
Tonight, 18-year-old Timothy George Simpkins is in custody. He fled the shooting but was later caught and charged with multiple counts of aggravated assault with a gun. Arlington police say a fight inside the school led to the shooting. Today, Texas Senator Ted Cruz commented about it.
Right now, I know all of us are lifting up in prayer the students and the teachers and the first responders and the parents. And there have been far too many of these at far too many schools.
One of the 4 victims is in critical condition tonight.
And now to that federal crackdown on concerned parents. A new directive allows school boards to report parents if they feel they are threatened. Parents calling it an attempt to squash and silence them.
The fallout centers on Attorney General Merrick Garland tasking the FBI and U.S. attorneys to find ways to protect school board members, teachers, and other public school staff from rowdy parental behavior that may turn into criminal conduct. But that's drawn the ire of at least one member of Congress who says Washington bureaucrats have no business trying to sideline parents in their own children's education.
CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson brings us more.
This past year, there's been no shortage of news coming out of packed school board meetings, with parents voicing their concerns on policies ranging from critical race theory to transgender students to pandemic restrictions like mask mandates.
You're telling us how to run our community?
In this letter to the Biden administration, the National School Board Association claims education leaders are under immediate threat, adding the actions of some parents are a form of domestic terrorism. In response, Attorney General Merrick Garland directed the FBI to get involved.
I think any time you want to make your point, that when it gets beyond a reasonable discussion, that's a bad way to make it. But they have to be able to make it, and you don't want the feds or bureaucrats interfering with the process.
Senator Mike Braun, a former school board member, tells CBN News parents need to have the primary say in their child's education.
When there's sincere discussion, even if it gets a little heated, that's a First Amendment right in the most important arena where we teach our kids, where we instill those early values.
Braun believes families and local school boards should dictate school curriculum, not federal mandates.
I think they're trying to distract from the content that they want to push forward, critical race theory, and direct traffic from here down, which they seem to want to do on everything.
Braun recently questioned Education Secretary Miguel Cardona on who should be in control of kids' education.
Do you think parents should be in charge of their child's education as the primary stakeholder?
I believe parents are important stakeholders, but I also believe educators have a role in determining educational programming.
Braun believes his response could preview federal school mandates to come.
And he wouldn't retract it either. That tells you how dug in they are on wanting to do things from here to dictate what we do in our own school systems.
Braun believes schools are run best when state and local governments are at the helm, instead of Washington lawmakers dictating policies that will never work in all 50 states. Reporting from Virginia, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
And here with us now is Penny Nance, President and CEO of Concerned Women for America. Penny, good to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. So the National,
great to be here, Jenna.
The National School Boards Association letter to the White House warned that America's public schools and its leaders are under immediate threat. And this was in response to Attorney General Garland's order that the Justice Department address an increase in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence. Penny, is this about cutting parents out of their children's education?
You know, I think it's even bigger than that. It's let's back up a second and recognize that we see a presidency that's teetering on the verge of collapse. We're seeing chaos at the southern border. We saw Americans die in the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. We have a $28 trillion debt, and Congress is thinking of raising the debt limit so that the country can be more in debt. We're seeing chaos in the schools. And you're seeing finally parents who are standing up to this false ideology, this godless ideology, this gender theory nonsense. You have CRT, which is the opposite of creating unity. And parents are standing up and saying, what are you doing? One very small good thing that came out of COVID is it opened the eyes of parents all over this country of what their children were being taught. As they walked by a Zoom call, they were, in another room. They're like, what? What did the teacher just say? And things that had gone unnoticed for decades became very apparent. How little the kids were learning, how chaotic the school system was. And parents are furious and they're standing up. So in an attempt to silence dissent, on October 4th, Merrick Garland did a memo to the FBI telling them to step forward and to stomp out the efforts from this parents to stand up for our children. It is a nationalization of law enforcement that is being, it's politics that's being weaponized against parents. And it is very frustrating and even more so dangerous.
Penny, you live in Virginia, seen by many as the center of the national debate when it comes to schools. Last week, the Democratic candidate for governor, Terry McAuliffe, said, quote, "I don't think parents should be telling schools what to teach." You're a parent in Virginia. What's been the fallout?
It has been cataclysmic for Terry McAuliffe. That really, Virginia has become the epicenter, and Northern Virginia, which is not conservative, it's not like Southern, it's not like Lynchburg, Virginia, where Liberty University exists. Northern Virginia tends to be a purple part of the state or even a more liberal part of the state. But I'm hearing parents, moms who have not been politically active ever before, say, this is outrageous. What we're experiencing at the hands of public schools who believe that they know better what's best for our kids, that they somehow can discern the kind of education and the kind of information that our children should receive. And what's further, and you pointed it out, is the Democratic candidate for governor, Terry McAuliffe, gave voice to that and admitted and said out loud what he's always believed. And that is parents just need to be quiet, they need to back down, and they need to let the professionals take care of their kids. Parents strongly disagree with that, and I think you're going to see a lot of moms coming to the polls, suburban women that perhaps sat the last one out, they're going to be voting this time around.
All right, Penny Nance with Concerned Women for America. Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.
Coming up, clear and present danger, what life under the new Taliban government looks like for religious minorities in Afghanistan. Next. Welcome back. As Islamic extremism returns to Afghanistan under Taliban rule, many faith communities are hiding in the shadows, bracing for a wave of persecution.
Religious freedom advocates are taking steps to help them survive as the Taliban and ISIS fight for control of the region. CBN's Brody is following new plans to keep Afghan Christians and other religious minorities safe.
Since the Taliban took control in August, Afghanistan's economy is on the brink of collapse. Women's freedoms have been stripped, and people of faith, especially Christians, fear the worst is yet to come. Yusuf hopes world leaders will use the worsening enemy and the Taliban's political desires as bargaining chips to protect religious minorities.
Since the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan in mid-August, the Taliban has intimidated, threatened, and targeted leaders from religious minority communities.
2 months into the Taliban's rule, young fighters fill the streets of Kabul. Peace and stability are silenced by violence, including targeted kidnappings and destruction at places of worship, including a recent bombing at this mosque, killing at least 5 people.
In May 2021, at least 85 people, most Hazara Shia female students, were killed in bombings outside a high school.
Members of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom sounding the alarm and sharing the plight of religious minorities.
2 weeks ago, the Taliban's former head of religious police, now in charge of prisons, announced that executions and amputations would resume.
The Afghan government operates as a Sunni Islamic republic, which pressures citizens to adhere to Muslim traditions. That leaves a sliver of the populations, such as Christians, Sikhs, Hindus, and Baha'i, living in constant fear of the Taliban's harsh punishment, including execution, simply for believing otherwise.
One of us is always awake during the night, always walking around and praying. So if the Taliban should come and knock on our door, we should alert everyone.
Yusuf says Afghanistan's religious minorities are nearly extinct, noting the last Jew fled the country in September. The organization hopes to use the Taliban's economic problems and desire for international recognition as an open door to restore peace and equal rights for all people in the country.
And how the United States will partner with other countries to use those leverage points as a way of encouraging the Taliban to uphold their side of the agreement that was agreed in the peace process, related to inclusive government, related to human rights, and also related to protection of security.
If you'd like to tangibly help Afghanistan, Yusuf recommends helping the tens of thousands of Afghan refugees now living in the States. Landlords can rent to Afghans without a credit check. You can sign up to drive a refugee or even help teach English to those living in your communities. And most importantly, to pray for our Christian brothers and sisters in Afghanistan. Brody Carter, CBN News.
All right. Thank you, Brody. Joining us now, senior CBN international correspondent George Thomas. George, it's always great to see you in that beautiful suit, buddy. In today's Religious Freedom event, Brody asked about persecuted Christians in Afghanistan. Yusuf said it was unable to find any data and that there are few, if any, members of religious minorities remaining in Afghanistan. George, I know you have a vast network of sources there in Afghanistan and beyond. What are they telling you?
I found that response by Yusuf quite remarkable. Either two options, guys. One is that they don't have any access to the top leadership of the Afghan house church movement, or two, that the top leadership of the Afghan house church movement are not talking to Yusuf or any other Western organization or political organization like Yusuf. But as you mentioned, I have, since the U.S. pullout 2 months ago, been in regular contact with top house church members of the Christian community, and they are in hiding. These are very difficult days. By no means are they out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. So what they have taken, the approach they've taken, guys, is that they're staying very much low in the shadows, not going outside. In fact, one woman I interviewed several days ago said that it had been weeks since she had left the house, and she decided to walk to a bank to get some money because they were running out of money. And she joined a line filled with women, and they were surrounded by the Taliban, accusing them, why are you out on the streets by yourself? Where is your male companion, your brother or your husband? And they threatened to kill them because they, in their mind, said that they were un-Islamic. So the contacts I'm talking to are, they're fearful, they're waiting, they're staying very low, low-key, and trying to decide, make strategic moves in the weeks and months ahead to get a sense of how they're going to continue to share the gospel in this very, very strict and difficult place to live today as a Christian.
Yeah. George, the Taliban is saying Sharia law is the law of the land. What does that mean for Christians and other religious minorities and ethnic groups?
Yeah, it bodes very ill. I mean, reality, I mean, the last 20 years, it was difficult, even though the United States, as well as coalition partners and the Afghan government were in charge for 20 years. But it was still, guys, very difficult for Christians, Hindus, Baha'is, Shia Muslims, Hazara, the Hazara ethnic group. They had a difficult time. They had a modicum of freedom, and the church grew. I mean, really, the church has grown in Afghanistan over the last 20 years like never before, and they have seen the fruits of their labor. But the days and the weeks, the months ahead are going to be very, very difficult. And it's going to be interesting to see. Look, the reality is that when you have Islamic Sharia law, and I've been to most countries that impose this very draconian 7th century-like system of Islamic jurisprudence, it ain't pretty, seriously. And so when the guy who runs the horrible vice and virtue says that amputations are back, executions are back, stoning to death of adulterers is back, you got to believe that's going to happen. And it already is happening. We're hearing those reports, and it does not bode well for all Afghans, guys, not just for Christians or for the Hazaras, but for all Afghans who do not and have lived under the Taliban. They know it either from their parents' time. They don't like what they see, obviously.
Yeah, it's brutal. George, just in about 30 seconds here, but what can the U.S. do to try to push the Taliban toward universal rights for Afghanis? You know, I was so shocked that one of the USARF members said that, you know, we have the economic leverage to try and make sure that the Taliban adhere to universal rights of human rights and so forth. That's absolutely rubbish. There's no way that's going to happen. We've not seen this happen in other Islamic countries, and I don't expect that's going to be. It's going to be a tough road for the United States to twist the arms of the Taliban to force them to adhere to universal rights, guys.
CBN's George Thomas. George, thank you so much for your insights.
You're welcome.
And when we come back, the nuclear option, why the president is considering blowing up the rules of the Senate to lift the debt ceiling.
Welcome back. The president is considering going nuclear in the Senate. Mulling over that drastic option indicates a willingness to blow up Senate rules to raise the limit on the nation's debt.
Are Democrats considering using the nuclear option to raise the debt limit?
Well, I think that's a real possibility.
Democrats still face a October 18th deadline to raise the limit on the nation's allowable debt, and without Republican support. If they don't pull that over, the government will run out of money to pay its bills. Mr. Biden says Democrats are considering doing away with the filibuster so they can pass it on a straight party line majority vote. Experts warn of unprecedented economic catastrophe if an agreement isn't reached by that deadline.
And here with us now, Chief Political Analyst David Brody. So, David, the nuclear option, that could happen. It looks like tonight, though, there could be a deal struck. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has offered Democrats two options on the debt limit. Either one, allow them a short-term extension, or two, give Democrats an expedited reconciliation process. David, do you think this is Republicans' effort to avoid the nuclear deal?
Well, there's so much going on, and honestly, Jenna, it's changing by the minute. Look, where do I even begin on this? Republicans, this is a smart play, not shockingly, by Mitch McConnell. I mean, he's a guy that's been around the Senate for a very long time, and he knows, indeed, that you got to show that you're doing something, and these are a couple of options. They're not the best options for Democrats, but it basically says that, look, Republicans are willing to raise the debt ceiling so that the Republicans will have, in essence, something to say that we didn't block anything. We gave them an option, and they either turned it down or possibly won't turn it down. We'll see what Schumer and the Democrats do. But already, Senator Bernie Sanders is saying it's progress. And so we'll see what happens. But my guess is what they'll do ultimately is extend this through November. In other words, December 1st is when the debt ceiling would run out, but at least have a couple more months to get through and possibly work on something more permanent. That's my sense of it right now.
Measuring progress in months. David, though, at the same time, as we mentioned earlier, President Biden appears to be warming to the idea of using the nuclear option. Do you think that may be likely, particularly if we can't get past December?
Right. I mean, obviously, if you get past December, then all options, including the nuclear one, are on the table. And this was also smart by Biden to bring it up. And Democrats, look, this is all this is all a parlor game at this point. We're kind of seeing how it plays out on both sides. Both sides are trying to say, with Biden, for example, by bringing up the nuclear option, he doesn't want to do the nuclear option. He's been against it, ever since he's been in the Senate, which is like Reconstruction. He don't want to do it, but he will do it if he needs to. And so he at least needs to put it out there to get Republicans to move. And I think everybody understands you cannot default on the national debt. You just can't do it. And so they will figure out a way to get it done. They're all big boys and girls there, I think. Wait, maybe not. But anyhow, I think they are in the Senate. We'll see.
David, over on the House side, Speaker Nancy Pelosi's iron grip with her caucus appears to have weakened at least some. You know, she tried to bring the bipartisan infrastructure bill to the floor for a vote. Progressives, though, stopped her, demanding that that bill, along with the $3.5 trillion bill, pass. President Biden also sided with those progressives to keep the two bills together. Your thoughts on all of that, David?
Well, Nancy Pelosi should listen to the soundtrack from Hairspray. And why do I always quote the Broadway musical Hairspray on Faith Nation? I don't know why, but there is a song called You Can't Stop the Beat. And that's what Nancy Pelosi is facing. In other words, there is progressive after progressive, 94 plus of them in the House, and she cannot stop the beat. They've got control. They will decide what happens and what doesn't happen in the House. So as much as everybody, including the media, loves to talk about Nancy Pelosi as this great vote counter and someone that can get the job done, the truth of the matter is she can't get anything done if progressives stick together. And boy, progressives have stuck together on this one big time. And Joe Biden knows where his bread is buttered. He's sticking with the progressives, not Nancy Pelosi, who, by the way, 2022 will be gone either way. Either she'll move on to San Francisco in retirement based on the fact that the Democrats lose control of the House, or even if they keep control, she'll still move on. She said this will be her last term as Speaker.
CBN's David Brody, you're going to have to send us your playlist. Thank you so much for your time, David.
You don't want to see that.
Coming up, the background on the celebration that explains why some kids are bringing their Bibles to school this week.
Finally tonight, tomorrow, thousands of kids across the country will take their Bibles to school.
It's all part of the National Bring Your Bible to School Day. Focus on the Family's Danny Huerta talked a little bit about it today. Last year, as he mentioned, more than 500,000 students participated from over 50,000 schools. And more are expected to join this year. CBN News would love to share your photos of students who participate. You can submit those pictures to prayer, link at cbn.org.
And we can't wait to see them.
Thanks for watching.